afternoon. You're watching Businessworld Live. I'm Danie Laurel. Let's take a look at how the local bourse closed today. Let's kick off with a quick peek on the peso. You can see that on my terminal here. This, of course, as investors had digested trade data this morning. Exports and imports had grown double digits, but the exports were slightly lower than what we were expecting. And you can see here the trade deficit widening more than analysts had estimated, bringing our peso to fall. We closed at 50 spot 833. And if you take a look at our own local bourse, you can see the same downward trend here. We are down by 0.2%, closing at 7,107.82, just like our previous island counts here. But the good point or good news of the day is the fact that we did see some net foreign buying today. You can see that small green line over here, and those net purchases were worth 2.8 million pesos, even as in general foreign trading volume was down to 2.1 billion pesos today. Let's take a look at our leaders and laggards of the day. You can see Jollibee Foods leading the pack here, up by 4.5%, followed by GD Cap, Globe, and Metro Pacific, as well as BPI. So not a real clear picture here on why they are actually leading here. But on the downside, you've got Wilcon down by 5.8%, together with ICTSI and Bloomberry, of course, two Razon companies, and another telco player here, Converge, which is in the loser board. Let's take a look at two companies that are, of course, very related and playing on their dividends here. First of all, you've got Semirara. That's up a hefty 10% just today, closing at 28 pesos. That's up by 2 pesos and 55 centavos. That is, the highest that we've seen in 3 years in terms of a jump, as the volumes traded triple. So what did they actually do today? Well, they did declare 7.4 billion pesos in special cash dividends. That will be an all-time high payout in 2021. So that is actually on top of the 5.3 billion pesos in regular cash dividends, which are already paid out in April of this year. So if you add all of that, all the shareholders of Semirara in 2021 will be receiving a total of 12.7 billion pesos, the highest in its history. And you can see on my terminal here that jump here in terms of the yield of how much they're going to be getting as investors of Semirara. And another related is, of course, their parent company, DMCI. They have declared 6.37 billion pesos in special cash dividends on top of the 6.37 billion regular already in April this year. So that will be 12.75 billion pesos that the shareholders will be receiving. That's 194% of a dividend payout ratio, or 194% as compared to their net income here. And another one that we want to watch out for today, of course, is Medilines and Santa Lucia. This as the SEC has approved their share sale. Despite not filing for candidacy as president before the deadline on October 8, there is still a strong possibility that presidential daughter and Davao City Mayor Sara Duterte will still run for president in 2022. That's according to Fitch Solutions. Fitch Solutions notes that there remains a loophole in which Sara could still run, that is, substituting for another candidate before the November 15 deadline, as her father did 6 years earlier. PDP Laban standard bearer Senator Bato de la Rosa has also admitted that he is willing to give way to Sara if ever she changes her mind about running in the upcoming polls. This means there's still potential for the Davao City Mayor to file a late bid for the presidency. Fitch Solutions also notes that most presidential aspirants like De La Rosa are aiming to provide some continuity for the projects of the current administration. However, some have also said that they will end Duterte's war on drugs and take a tougher stance towards disputes in the South China Sea. Here are the other headlines we're keeping our eyes on. Foreign borrowings of the public sector grew almost 19% in the third quarter. That's as the country continues to fill its coffers to aid recovery from the pandemic. The Monetary Board has approved a total of $4.66 billion in foreign borrowings, by the public sector in the past 3 months. That's nearly 19% higher than the $3.9 billion approved last year. The BSP says these borrowings will fund the country's general financing requirements, reform programs in the financial sector, and youth employment, as well as disaster resilience. The borrowings will also be used to fund assistance for the agriculture sector and for the country's emergency response. Now, the Interior Department says it's likely that Metro Manila's alert level status will be eased to the less stricter level 3 by Saturday. That's October 16th. Undersecretary Epimaco Densing told Radio 5's Filon that the COVID situation in the capital has met all criteria for a downgrade in restrictions. These include the sustained drop in COVID-19 infections and the decrease in hospital utilization to the 50 to 60% level. Densing also noted that Metro Manila mayors have all supported the move to ease restrictions in the capital. Densing also notes that the alert level system may also be implemented in regions outside of the metro, with some areas like Biliran already qualified for alert level 1. As cases begin to lower in the Philippines is said to be winning the fight against the Delta variant, will such numbers translate into higher employment? Here to chat about where we are, we have with us ASEC Dominique Tutay of the Department of Labor and Employment. Good morning, ASEC, and good afternoon, ASEC, and welcome.
Hi, good day, Dan, and to all the televiewers out there.
ASEC, just a quick update here on the NERS, of course, the National Employment Recovery Strategy. You already mentioned that 780,000 new jobs were added. But tell us, does this, in what way does this compensate for the number of jobs lost?
Well, it's not enough, honestly speaking. Even our target of about a million, for instance, a year has not yet been reached. And even the PDP target of 2.4 to 2.8 million jobs have not been achieved yet. This is because our unemployment rate is still high as of August. That's 8.1, and that translates to 3.9 million Filipinos, just close to the 4 million when we started in January this year.
Okay, ma'am, let's talk more about that. Where do these new jobs come from? You've mentioned, I think earlier, that it was from the construction sector. So are these jobs, transitory? Are these jobs going to be sustained throughout the pandemic? And are there updates on other sectors that can make us feel that this employment or additions to the employment figures might actually be sustainable in the long term?
Yeah, actually, for the construction sector, we call that project-based because the employment also ends when the duration of the project is finished. But what we know with the construction sector, if you build the infrastructure needed by the investments, then it means also that more investments will come into the country when all our infrastructures are ready. Transport, logistics, even telcos, so on and so forth, bridges, ports, so on. So it will create additional jobs in other sectors. But for now, we have to realize that the construction sector has already generated about 4 million each year from the time that it started during this administration at about 2.9 to 3 million. So that's good enough source of our employment. For the other sector, in the Nurse Task Force and ECO project of 1 million jobs project coming from the private sector, we have made so far an initial dent in our 1 million job target, but I'm not gonna announce the figures yet. But mostly these are coming from manufacturing, particularly electronic sector and semiconductors.
Okay, so related also to our trade figures here that the exports are picking up, albeit a little bit slower than what analysts were hoping for. Ma'am, you mentioned 3.88 million people unemployed in August, of course, but we did expect that, not necessarily this figure, but that there would be higher unemployment than July due to the ECQ in the metro. Are you disappointed with this figure, or is it just in line with the estimates? And how fast is this going to be recovered?
We have already anticipated that the August labor force survey round will increase in terms of unemployment because of the hard lockdown again during the August month. But moving forward, now that there is already a change from the ECQ to certain alert levels 1, 2, 3, and 4, and there's already granular lockdown, then we expect a better scenario in terms of the labor market, and more businesses will open, especially now that the election fever is already here. Candidates have already filed their candidacy. We're also looking forward to the Christmas or holiday season coming in. And also, the other bright spot would be, of course, more people have been vaccinated, so they are more confident to go out of their homes and go back to work.
Ma'am, let's talk about those 3 points that you mentioned. First, the national elections. To what extent have you seen election period increase unemployment? Is there going to be an expectation here because this is going to be an election year that there will be more jobs promised?
Yes, that's correct. If you look at statistics over time, every election year that generates about 1.5 to 2 million net employment generated by the economy. Then maybe a year after, it will taper down again. But I'm not really sure because we are now in a pandemic situation. So the employment may increase, but maybe not as much as we have experienced in the past election years.
Okay, and what about the fact that it's closing in on the Christmas holidays? Is that going to be, and how, is this a temporary trend in the fourth quarter usually na maraming employment and we will expect that to be going down again? Or is this something that can spur more momentum moving forward?
Mostly, if it's holiday seasons, then it's also like seasonal jobs, and it ends like January to February. But again, 2022 is election year, so these jobs may be sustained even after the end of 2022.
Okay, so sana may momentum and then the elections will give more
Yes.
momentum. The vaccine story, which camp are you on when it comes to vaccine bubbles? The ones being proposed by the private sector were in high risk areas like
Mhm.
gyms or restaurants, but there's also an idea of, for example, workplace scenarios na dapat vaccinated lang to go to the offices or public transport, even the separation between. Is this going to encourage people to go to work and to get jobs because they feel it's safer, or is this going to limit the amount of employment?
Actually, Dan, we really want also people to get vaccinated because, first of all, they will really get extra protection when they get out of their house and go to work. And then, secondly, more and more workers need to be vaccinated for us to, on our way path to, or on our path to recovery. Then, therefore, there should be like confidence, not just in the businesses, but also in terms of our consumers and also our workers. So we do hope that people get vaccinated. In the A4 category, for instance, we may not have reached even 50% of our workers getting vaxxed. In our records, we have gotten from the Department of Health, about 10 million have gotten their first dose, while 7 million on their second dose. So it's not 50% yet of the total 44 million that were employed as of August 2021.
Ma'am, from the DOLE's perspective, what is causing this delay in this workers not being vaccinated, especially since the private sector has been very pushy in vaccinating their own employees?
I think even if there are vaccines coming in, it's not enough to cover 70% of the targeted population that should be vaccinated. And therefore, most of the companies still ask the assistance of the Department of Labor and Employment and also the Nurse Task Force for them to be vaccinated. So that's what we're doing with our Employers Confederation of the Philippines and Nurse Task Force 1 Million Jobs. We have secured more than 450,000 vaccines coming from Vaccine Czar Secretary Galvez.
So supply pa rin po yung issue. It's not a matter of their supply and they're hesitant to do it. It's more the supply.
Well, there are cases at the ground where we hear that they are hesitant to get vaccinated, but once their peers or their coworkers have been vaccinated, then they are already interested to go to the vaccination sites.
Okay. Ma'am, let's talk about unemployment versus underemployment. An economist has said that, okay, we are seeing more jobs being created, but these jobs are lower level jobs than what people were hoping for. Have you seen a remarked increase in underemployment, even as unemployment is going down?
Well, underemployment went up to its highest this year in the July round of the labor force survey at 20.9%. So that's about 8.7% underemployed persons. And during the August 2021 labor force survey, it went down to 14.7%, and that's equivalent to 6.5 million underemployed persons. But take note that this underemployment rate is still high because most of our companies and most of our workers are still under the flexible work arrangements. In our data, for instance, more than 2 million are still in flexible work arrangements. So when you are in a flexible work arrangements, then there is less number of hours or less number of days that they work. So that in
Okay.
itself explains
This-
underemployment.
And ma'am, what's the plan of the nurse task force now to be able to meet this 1 million plus 200,000 job target?
Well, we're doing our best, Dan, but as pointed out in the budget hearing yesterday in Senate, employment generation is not really the function of the government, but it's the private sector. So you really have to support the private sector. If they request for vaccines, give them the vaccines. If they request for a better mobility for the workers, then we have to support our private sector so that more jobs will be created. So our job is to facilitate and also to provide an environment that's conducive for the business.
Ma'am, last question po before we let you go. Is the DOLE happy so far with the current alert level system in terms of it being able to better alleviate unemployment compared to the previous systems?
Yeah, we're happy with the current alert level system because you just put into lockdown certain areas, CTOs or barangays, not entirely the region, which would really affect so much millions of our unemployed people. So, for instance, when you lock down NCR, it's the whole of NCR. But now in the current alert level system, it's just barangays or CTOs or specific subdivision.
Okay, so hoping for that to translate, of course, into lower unemployment in the next couple of months, coupled with the festive season plus elections, hoping for better
Yes.
days ahead. Thank you so much, ASEC Dominique Tutay of the DOLE.
Thank you.
Before we end the broadcast, we would like to extend our condolences to the family of Century Pacific Food founder and chairman emeritus Ricardo Po Sr., who has passed away at 90. Po died on Monday due to complications arising from surgery, the Philippine Star has reported. Po, a self-made entrepreneur who built one of the most famous food brands in the Philippines, had ranked 16th in Forbes 2021 list of the 50 wealthiest Filipinos with a net worth of $1.45 billion. Po is survived by his wife and their 4 children. And those are the biggest stories this trading day, October 12th, 2021. Catch Business World Live. That's tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. for the market open and 3:15 p.m. for the market close. I'm Danie Laurel. Mask on, wash hands, stay safe, Philippines. We are One News.